Hey everyone! HBO dropped another trailer for the 7th season of Game of Thrones and it's fantastic. We start with Sansa walking away from the weirwood tree at Winterfell. She looks frantic and worried. She's probably seen Peter Baelish die, or my big theory is she's just learned what Bran knows about Jon. Meanwhile, Peter Baelish advises us and Sansa that we should not fight the battles in the north or the south, but everywhere at the same time in our minds. We see Mira and Bran arriving at the wall, probably in the first episode itself, the gates opening and them bringing the news of the past and the warnings from the future to Westeros. Crowds roaring at Casterly Rock and the spooky, chilling music from the finale of season 6 begins as Cersei turns and gives us a cold look. We see Dany circling the painted table at Dragonstone where some of the pawns are still fallen from the time Stannis deserted it. She's going through the castle, she's going through the grounds around Dragonstone, trying to reconnect with her history, her ancestors. She even sees the Baratheon history there as she pulls down a Baratheon banner, the one which belonged to Stannis Baratheon when he occupied Dragonstone. We see dragons essentially flying back home as Tyrion looks over from the hills. He's back in Westeros and must be emotional about it, I'm sure. We see people getting out of a boat, mostly at Dragonstone, and this probably is Jon and co. forwarding the cause of peace and unity. We've got Batman and Brienne and Pod at Winterfell looking very cool. And then we have Jaime walking on the ramparts at Casterly Rock, maybe. He's still the head of the Lannister army. He's the biggest supporter that Cersei has. However, she might have one more supporter coming to her side with 100 Ironborn ships. Another infamous Uncle Euron Greyjoy will be there, probably after the confrontation of the Greyjoys, the clash of the Ironborn at sea. It's going to be the first naval battle on Game of Thrones with a lot of explosions of visual delight. There'll be Yara and Theon on one side and Euron Greyjoy, their dear horrible uncle, on the other side. It's going to be stunning. Especially the outcomes of this clash are going to be very important, since if Yara is captured, then Theon might have to take a stand by himself for the Ironborn group, and to an extent, Dany's forces will be depleted. We get glimpses of the Hound fighting in the north in battle. He's probably with Jon, and as the Hound, he's probably going to do good with the wolves. There's also him standing in the sun with a sword drawn and no pants, but all I can think of is Clegane Bowl. Grey Worm is seen probably in a boat near a big crack in the hill. Now, this hill is probably atop which the Casterly Rock castle is standing. It's nearly impregnable because it's surrounded almost entirely by water and it stands atop a huge hill. This is how the fortress of Casterly Rock is probably going to be annexed by the Targaryen forces through the Unsullied. Speaking of Grey Worm, he seems to be the only one getting love in this trailer. His men are ready for war, and so are the Lannister troops pulling their arrows into position as Jaime and Bronn lead and stand behind them. There's going to be heavy losses on both sides, I'm sure, but only a fool would go into battle with the Dothraki on an open field. It's practically giving them your life. So I don't know how far will Jaime succeed in this. He looks pretty screwed up when he's galloping forward. However, I'm really excited to see this whole war because it's the first with dragons full time in it. It has Drogon and Viserion and Rhaegal, all three of them together. So I don't know how the Lannister forces will survive. However, they are a trained and well-rested army. Meanwhile, Bran sends his little birds to survey the army of the Whites. You can see them beneath the birds. Now, the Night's King, because of his amazing powers, can sense Bran's presence there. So he looks sharply and Bran jerks out of his vision. We see him near a weirwood tree, probably at Winterfell or at Castle Black, with a man standing nearby. Now, I'm most interested in who this man is. There's Dany looking over the beaches of Dragonstone, probably seeing the arrival of Jon and his party. Jon and Davos look like they're in a surrounding pretty similar to the Dragonstone boulders and the beach there. There's Tyrion giving all sorts of perplexed and questioning looks, very appropriate to the stature of the Hand of the Queen. We also see Beric Dondarrion wielding his sword, which is amazingly flammable. That's probably his hand. Now we also get Tormund and Jon and various other fighting sequences. Jon's also having a combat with one of the Whites. It's really interesting, all these battle sequences of the War of Winter. I'm very excited about it. I'm planning to make a whole video on it. Jon's got a few lines out of his plea to the northern houses of standing united against the war that has always been there, the problem that has always been coming for them, which is why there's such a small group fighting the Whites in the north. You can see Beric Dondarrion holding his flaming sword behind Jon. There's all sorts of people, probably Thoros of Myr, Davos, maybe Brienne, Podrick. We don't exactly know who the group is, but it's a small, tiny group against the huge army of Whites. One major twist that might happen is that Jon might get hurt. Not fatally, but severely, because we see a figure very similar to Jon's returning on a horse, clearly wounded. Sansa talks about snow falling and white winds blowing, lone wolves dying while the packs survive. She's obviously either asking the Northern Lords to stay together, to be united, or she's talking to the other Starks about sticking together. Another big question I have is, who is this figure who goes to the water and falls? My theory is it's Gendry, but I'm not sure. What are your thoughts? What are your reviews about the whole trailer? It was amazing, I know. Let me know what you think and what your theories are in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, and see you next time.